first, I guess we can call it a skill, is the sales manager has to have an above average EQ. Emotional intelligence is when you're working with a bunch of different agents and an organization, understanding all these people, all these humans are different, and how you can connect with one versus the other, how you can motivate one over the other, when it's okay to kind of step in and be direct, and when you should be more consultative, is EQ, I call that, right? Your emotional intelligence. Because if you come in with just your hammer, hey, I'm the sales manager, I will tell you this never works at all. On the team leader side, the mistake I see understanding that J curve, that when you take on a new salary, you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I have this salary, I've got to recoup this investment. And they tend to want to throw the sales manager right into the fire. Or, hey, start fixing the problem, start getting these agents. The first thing I highly recommend this, if you're going to hire anyone in this kind of role, is their first maybe 2 to 4 weeks is just getting to know the agents, finding out, who they are, how they tick, what's important to them, and understanding them. Because if you don't get buy-in from the independent contractor sales team, I find they just shut down on the sales manager you just hired. They don't respect them, they don't listen to them, they don't show up for meetings and training. So step one is a high EQ salesperson, manager, and then give them some time before you give them a bunch of tasks to do to make things better, is let them connect with the team. If the team likes them, they will listen. You'll go far. If immediately they feel like they've got someone to micromanage them, you hire them a babysitter, I see the walls go up every time, and then they just want nothing to do with this hire. The second thing, I learned this from Mark Roberge. He wrote a great book for HubSpot called The Sales Acceleration Formula. And going back to that EQ, I've learned there's 3 types of salespeople, and you need to treat them differently, and they need to do different type of sales work to be most productive. The examples are the higher D personalities, the drivers, your lone wolves, like they're great on the phones, they'll call expireds, they'll handle objections easily. Great. Number 2 are these high expressives. They're not nearly as good on the phone, but man, you get them in front of another human, they will connect and build rapport and trust in like a second. They're very persuasive naturally. So I like to see them out on the road, at open houses, right? Anywhere their clients might be. Then they bring back deals every time. Then you have someone more like my wife, who's not a salesperson, but with her high S side of her organized side, I'd say, hey, Lisa, just call each of these sellers. I'm not sure when they're going to list this year, on the first of every month, and use this script. So those agents are technically correct. You give them a system and a process, and they will just come to the office every day and follow your system or process. All 3 can get really good results. But imagine if you take the more amiable agent and you tell them, you're going to make calls and call expireds, right? They'll hate the job and they won't do it. The expressive, give them too rigid of a schedule and a routine, and same thing, your job's gonna be on the phones for the first hour or 2. I don't think they stay in your organization. So having the flexibility to understand that there's 3 different types of salespeople, and your sales manager knowing how to train each one of them and connect with them, super important. Next skill would be relationship building, which we mentioned earlier, right? If they can't form a relationship with your team, you're not gonna get buy-in on there. So they've got to be strong relationship builders themselves, I found. But at the same time, the ones that do well, they can act as their sales manager, they can build relationships, but they know when they have to be firm, right? When someone's not following a standard or core value, the relationship part kind of ends, and you have to be their boss. And they know how to turn that on and off to keep everyone in alignment, which is a skill for sure. They need to understand that the main goal is not for them to achieve, I would tell you, the company goal, the team leader's goal. The goal is to help each of the agents achieve their personal goal. And then collectively, if they all achieve their goal, we hit the company goal. So understanding, again, what's important to them and how much money or how many sales they want to have, then it's the sales manager's job, in my opinion, to help them achieve each one of their goals. And then the agents feel like they're there for them, not to micromanage them. That works extremely, extremely well. The next skill, and I've seen this fairly recently, is that sales manager needs to have sales skills in real estate. It's very hard to get buy-in, especially as agents get better. If you haven't been on appointments or you don't know the scripts or objection handlers yourself, you're just a corporate sales manager, understands like a sales process and that kind of language. It works for a while with newer agents, but as agents get better, they want someone they could deal doctor with. They want someone who knows, hey, I've got this tough client, I'm going on a listing appointment. What should I do? Is a key spot. Sales managers that know how to do that. again, get a lot more buy-in and help their agent convert a lot more deals. So that becomes super important to me as well. Or the sales manager, I've seen this too. What if the agent, big listing, like normally they're working 300 or 400,000 and they get like a $2 million listing appointment. Just from a confidence standpoint, the sales manager that's willing to go on that appointment with them, I find they do a lot better and you get a lot more buy-in, again, because you're there to support your agents. And one of the jobs of leadership at any level is to make your people feel safe. So if they're getting into a situation and a price point they're not comfortable with, make them feel safe and go on that appointment with them was important. If they're making calls, you should be making calls too, right? If you ask them to do something, so maybe you're recruiting calls to their sales calls potentially, but that would be another skill. They should, most people lead by example, or they follow, I should say, other humans. They don't really listen to other humans. So you want them to do something, lead by example is a great way to make that happen. The sales manager also has a tough job, right? The markets the last couple of years, Kiwi, up and down. Consistency, right? They can't be emotional highs and lows. Is that they need to be the rock of the organization, whether things are really good or really bad. They're more within a band, right? They have emotion, but they're not like, oh my God, it's the best year ever. We're all going to be rich. And then like, oh my gosh, interest rates went to 8. We should just all quit now. They've got to be that rock of consistency, that the team knows who's showing up every day, kind of what their energy level will be, their personality type. Because as soon as you seem to fluctuate a little too much, people don't know, like, all right, what kind of mood will he be in today? Or can we talk to him today? Is he having a good day? Again, very hard to lead others when you're inconsistent with those kind of behaviors. And then in the last year or so is being positive and optimistic. There are plenty of things to point out where this year has been tough, but there's plenty of opportunity for growth and increased commissions and all of that. Is you have to be the messenger of the positive information back to them. Keep them positive, because they go on social, they listen to the news, and you might start thinking that the markets are going to crash, which I still hear, believe it or not, over and over again on there. Standards, you have to create standards within your organization. And that's a skill, because you have to enforce those standards. I see many teams that they say they have standards, and then when I challenge them if they're enforcing those standards, the answer most of the time is no. They don't enforce the standards for a number of different reasons. Then I'd heard this quote years ago: if you have standards and you're not enforcing them, you're running your team on suggestions, which usually doesn't work so well. So you've got to be nice enough to connect with them, but then strong enough to enforce standards. And what I found is less rules, the better. If you have too many standards or too many benchmarks on your team, few or any are going to be executed. So I'm a big fan of 4DX strategies, is where you have like a leading indicator, one of those that we track daily, and then we review weekly with a cadence, accountability, and a dashboard is the best way to go with that. And for sales managers, the one I like best is, how many appointments are they setting or appointments are they meeting? That's a leading indicator, which we can track on there. And we know if they get so many of those appointments met, depending on whether they're newer, in the middle, or an experienced agent, how many deals they can close. So if that metric is off, sales manager could say, wow, Kiwi, you're a pretty good agent, but you have twice as many appointments met than you should for the number of contracts. Let me help you, because there's a little gap there. The other challenge with sales managers that also trickle up to the team leader, the agents that are not a great culture fit or maybe are not adhering to the standards, a lot of teams over-generate leads, which is a big problem, because then they don't want to let anyone go, because they don't have enough people calling the leads they're generating now. If we let these 2 people go, then we'll have less people. That's a bigger problem. So let's just leave them on board. The problem with that is everyone else in the organization knows they're not really carrying their weight of doing the right thing, and they talk, and now most of your organization will start reflecting more of their behaviors because they know they can get away with it. So my teams that grow the fastest, when there's someone who's not a good culture fit or not meeting the minimum standards, they get rid of them very quickly on there. Most don't, I will tell you. Because then it becomes more of a recruiting role, which most people try to avoid. But if you're building a sales team, folks, you're going to have turnover. Especially if you're bringing in newer agents on these 50-50 splits. Once they get their skills, they're looking for a higher split. I compare it often. I'm a big hockey fan. I grew up playing hockey for years, and I realized a hockey team is almost identical to a real estate team. As you bring these young kids in, get them on the team. You hope you give them some skills and you hope they're going to make it. A bunch of them don't. On the teams that I coach, about 50% of all recruited agents on a larger team will not be here in 90 days, to give you some parallel perspective. And then once you train them up, 2.5 years, they're looking for a higher split, which your model may and probably doesn't support. So they leave. So you got to have a bench. You got to have a farm team to constantly replace this turnover. That's another mistake I see. They wait till they leave and they're surprised, like, oh my gosh, we don't have enough agents. Quick, start recruiting. And just like a sales pipeline, a recruiting pipeline on a growing team is a function. Every day, we should be calling some people, nurturing relationships to bring in our future players on our real estate team on there. Because I believe the role of the team leader and the sales manager, just like sports, any sports, is put the best team on the field every day. And the enemy of great is good. So if you got some people that are kind of making some calls, they're kind of meeting the standards, we tend to be okay with that. But I believe you should be out in the marketplace looking for more talented people every day to replace the ones that are good, to have a team of higher caliber, maybe great players on the team. And that's where you find real success, because great players want to be with other great players, and you'll find it's easier to recruit when you have better players on your team versus the ones that, have more of a casual atmosphere there. Next skill would be they have to develop talent. So you have this human, maybe they know a little bit of real estate, great sales leaders, or like great managers again in sports. You can have a player on this team, QE, right? And they're doing okay. But all of a sudden they join this other team and they're having the best season of their life, because great leaders know how to get the most out of their players on there. So how do you develop this person into the best version of themselves the way they want to do it is definitely a skill, because it's going to be a little bit different for a lot of the team members on the team. And then sales managers that understand this skill, which took me years of coaching to realize. I believed if I did a training class for the agents that I taught them something. And then I realized after years, I'd go back and ask them questions. They didn't really learn anything. So I realized when we do a training class, we're giving the agents information, which is great. But the learning doesn't happen until we apply or practice the information we learned in training. So having processes in place, say, hey, we're going to learn maybe a script, but then we all role play the script for a week or two to make our calls. And then we test them to see if they learn the script before we go on to the next lesson. We tend to fire hose them. We're going to teach open house this week. Next week is expires. Then we're going to teach this new script we have. And we think we're teaching, but I realized after questioning the agents, no, we're not teaching them anything. They're collecting information. They have a lot of notes, but they really don't learn anything until we slow down and practice and apply, like open house, right? We're going to teach them how to do an open house. Great sales managers will actually conduct an open house and go with them and teach them and show them after they tell them what they're supposed to do, where they learn the most on there. So that's a few, if not many. To your point, a lot of hats, a lot of them understanding leads, lead conversion. Actually, we didn't even talk about that. Is what they need to know is you got to need to, what lead source and what conversion should that be converting at? And then if your team is below that, why? And then solving those challenges is another hat on there. So plenty of hats as a sales manager. They probably have the most, I would tell you, in a team setting.